Lawyers of Reddit, what's the most ridiculous argument you've heard in court? I'm a lawyer. The most ridiculous argument I've seen was one I actually made. One of my clients got busted cooking meth. This was a very clear-cut case. They actually caught him in the middle of a cook. No way he was getting out of this one. Even worse, he was cooking at home and children were there. Yep, the DA loaded him up with felonies. There was no bail and he was being held in the county jail. My client knew he was screwed. He had been planning to get married a few weeks after he got busted. My client asked me if he can get released for 24 hours so he can still get married. I tell him that I'll ask, but there's no way they'll let him out. First, I ask the DA if they'll allow it. Nope, they laugh. So I file a motion with the court. Now, I knew the judge was a crusty old conservative family values kind of guy, who also has a raging erection for drug crime. There was no law involved, but I put together an argument about the sanctity of marriage and how the state should encourage marriage at all times, and that sort of thing. We have a hearing and I make the argument. The DA is totally opposed and calls it ridiculous. And the judge grants it. The judge actually decided to allow my client out for 24 hours to get married. He had to surrender at the county jail at 8 a.m. the next day, and some other conditions, but still he was allowed out. Everyone is stunned, nobody can believe it. The day the wedding comes, my client gets out, gets married, then goes back to the jail. Everything went exactly like how it was supposed to, which is also pretty shocking. You know, it's kind of a weird concept to me to want to get married right before you're about to go to prison for a long time. I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose of having a family if it's impossible for you to ever stay together. Former assistant state attorney/prosecutor here. This defendant is called up for an arraignment, and the judge is telling him that he's been charged with theft for stealing a roll of scratch-off tickets from a gas station. The judge informs the defendant that since the value of the tickets was over $300, therefore it's a felony rather than a misdemeanor. The defendant says to the judge, "But Your Honor, to be fair, the tickets were all losers," implying it's not theft at all. I was amazed at the ingenuousness yet futility of the argument. Hey, if you lose at gambling, you're supposed to suffer. You can't just go bypassing that part. Traffic court, speeding ticket. Your Honor, I didn't speed, and I can prove it with logic. Okay. See, I drive a Prius. Okay. See, that proves I'm responsible, specifically in the realm of cars, so I obviously wouldn't speed. She had to pay the ticket. You know, I was just watching the South Park episode about those smug people, how everyone gets a hybrid car and they're so full of themselves that they create a cloud of smug. And I thought that episode was a bit far-fetched, but apparently it's not. I have a brief encounter. An old lady slipped and fell on an icy driveway, which was not salted or maintained, so she wanted to sue for damages. After hearing the story, turns out the lady fell on her own driveway, which she did not salt or maintain. She was wanting to sue herself. Well, based on some of the insane lawsuits I've heard of in the past, it wouldn't surprise me if a lawyer wouldn't mind taking your money for a case of suing yourself, because they'll take money for anything. Law student, former professor's story. The defendant busted for possession of narcotics. They were in the pockets of his leather jacket. He argues the search was illegal because with his buttery smooth leather jacket, there's no way the officer would have felt the drugs in his pocket during a pat-down, so he shouldn't have reached in the pocket to find the drugs in the first place. The judge asks if the jacket is the one he's currently wearing in court. It was. The judge asks to feel his jacket and the pockets. The defendant hands it to the bailiff. The judge finds more drugs in the pocket. Needless to say, it didn't go well for him. Alright, come on, double or nothing. Come feel my jacket. I bet you can't feel anything. Not a lawyer, but was a child in the custody case between my parents. My mother's lawyer argued for and had put in the final agreement that I had to add my mother as a Facebook friend. Wow, that's a pretty tall order. I feel like that might be asking too much. Also a lawyer. Had opposing counsel try to argue that because a landlady had written on her eviction notice, "It has been a pleasure getting to know you, but please leave." But had testified that they were awful tenants that she hated, that she was dishonest and nothing she said could be trusted. Opened the question of dishonesty wide open. Although the landlady wasn't an angel, the tenants had an enormous string of fraud priors we could tell the courts about as a result. You know, a lot of very rich and powerful people remain very rich and powerful because they have sort of a pact with all of the other rich and powerful people that I won't rat on you if you don't rat on me. And I don't want to bring up investigations about other people because then I might get investigated and then everybody loses. But apparently at this level they haven't really learned that yet. Not a lawyer, but when my mom was killed by a drunk driver, we were filling a wrongful death suit, and the lawyer for the defense used my mom's cancer to say that she was going to die anyway, so a wrongful death dispensation was not owed. And people say lawyers are heartless. Several years ago, I was doing a civil trial, defending a woman who allegedly hit a bus matron with her car. We had offered to concede liability and just try damages. In other words, the jury wouldn't hear the circumstances of how the injury happened, just that we agreed my client caused the injury, and they would only decide the amount of damages. We had evidence that the plaintiff was significantly exaggerating her injuries. The plaintiff's attorney refused to agree to our concession. thinking that if the jury heard the circumstances, they'd want to give even more money to punish my client. So we went to trial on liability. The plaintiff called one witness, her client, who testified that an older woman in a green car hit her. They rested and I moved for a dismissal for failure to prove a case. There was literally no evidence connecting my client to this incident. Just an older woman in a green car. The plaintiff never bothered to call my client to the stand. The attorney told the judge that the bus driver had written down my client's license plate and gave it to the police. They never bothered trying to find the bus driver. The attorney asked if she could just put the police report in, and I objected that it was hearsay. The attorney then actually said, "Please, just let me put this in. I haven't had work in a while and I got retained by a firm to try this case. I really need to win this." Of course I didn't agree, and the judge dismissed the case. I felt a little bad for her, but that was maybe the worst presentation of a case I ever saw. I spoke with the jury afterwards, and they all said they hated the plaintiff, didn't believe a word she said, and likely would have found in my favor anyway. Moral of the story? Be prepared in court. Man, wouldn't you love it if you got sent to prison because your lawyer had to deal with their lawyer that, you should just let me win this one for once. I had multiple mothers in separate cases claim that they couldn't be sent to prison because it breached their European Union right to a family life. I can only assume they got it from something like the Daily Mail because they all use that same phrasing. Yep, I have a right to a good life. That means that I can do anything I want and there's nothing you can do to take that away from me. I had a pro se litigant argue that she didn't owe the credit card companies because Jesus. The basic argument was that debt is a sin, or maybe not paying the debt was a sin, and Jesus died for all our sins. Therefore, Jesus died to pay off her debt. Brilliant. Alright, well, when should we expect the check from Jesus? Not a lawyer, because they don't exist. I got a ticket for an expired parking meter. Went in and contested it. The guy says, "The parking authority took some pictures for evidence. How do you explain these?" The pictures include my car, my license plate, and the parking meter, which clearly showed 13 minutes left on it. Yeah, but we knew it was going to run out at some point, so he could still get in trouble. Actual lawyer, what I dubbed the surprise party defense. In a hearing for an order of protection in which ex-wife is trying to get an order of protection against ex-husband who had been stalking her. They have a high school-aged child together. Ex-husband tries to argue against the order of protection by saying that they may need to be able to communicate about the child. The judge points out that they can communicate through the child, and also that other family members have been put in place by the juvenile court to be intermediaries, pick up, drop off, etc. Then ex-husband has a brilliant light bulb idea. "Judge, what if I need to throw my son a surprise party, and I need to keep it a secret from everyone, but his mom still needs to know so she doesn't throw a party that same day?" In other words, while I admit have been stalking my ex-wife and there are grounds to grant an order of protection, you should not grant that order, just in case I need to throw a surprise party one day. What made it was how clever he thought the argument was. Thus was born the surprise party defense. This reminds me of the one summer camp I ever went to, where the camp counselor comes in and is like, "Alright, we're gonna answer some questions, but I will not answer any what-if questions. I don't even want to hear them." Wasn't the other lawyer, but his client. Took the stand in a retail theft trial. Claimed he didn't steal a couple salmon fillets on purpose. He was just so flustered by a phone conversation with his girlfriend that he accidentally slipped them into the pocket of his jacket. In a part of the store the loss prevention officer called Shoplifter Alley, because it's a blind spot for the cameras, and walked out without realizing it. It's not like it was a candy bar or something small. It was 2 salmon fillets. I asked him, "Have you ever done that before?" He said no. I said, "Have you ever seen anyone anywhere ever put fish like that in their pocket in your entire life?" No. Come on, man, if you just pay for the fish, you don't have to eat it with pocket lint all over it. My uncle did malpractice defense. Well, one year he had to defend a surgeon. The patient said after his elbow surgery he couldn't play tennis anymore. They went through weeks of work trying to figure out what went wrong and why all of a sudden this guy couldn't play tennis. Because according to all evidence, the surgery went fine and he should be good. Then, right before a recess, my uncle stopped and asked, "Sir, have you ever played tennis before?" The guy said, "Well, no, but I've always wanted to." The case got dismissed. Man, it's too bad that didn't work. I couldn't just go into my doctor, get a physical, and then try to sue him because after my checkup, I'm not able to fly. Oh geez, where do I start? I mean, I could probably tell plenty of these about my own clients, but I like this one. A lady has an injury/comp case. It's for her upper back, and of course complex regional pain syndrome. She decides she needs the insurance company to pay for a special mattress for her, like a $6,000 memory foam with heat and massage and 1,000 other features. And not just a twin, she needs a California king because of course her layabout unemployed boyfriend needs to sleep there too. We spend months litigating this thing. Finally she buys it herself, and my client agrees to give her $1,500 just to be done with it. The judge takes myself and opposing counsel aside and says he's gonna screw us if we ever say the word mattress in his court again after wasting all this time. It was that ridiculous. Not 3 months go by, and the case comes on for another hearing. After exhausting all the chiropractic care allowed under the law, her doctor was seeking a variance to get some additional chiropractic. We get to the court, and I'm arguing it should be denied. The judge turns to her and says, "Ma'am, why do you feel you need more chiropractic care?" She pauses for a minute and then says, "I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping on my mattress." I think I saw smoke coming out of his ears. See, I understand that there are certain cases where you are obligated to sue somebody for completely screwing you over. But then there are cases like this where you can tell that the person is just trying to make a quick buck and they are really just trying to take advantage of the system. And it actually kind of gives a bad name to anyone who brings up a lawsuit for anything. I was a juror, but this was a heck of a defense. The defendant ran through a red light and crossed against traffic in front of an officer. She was over twice the limit. It wasn't her fault. She had a cut on her arm that her dog licked. The yeast from the dog's saliva entered her bloodstream and converted her blood sugar into alcohol. I'm pretty sure this is not true. And you know how I know it's not true? Because if it was, there'd be so many people out there doing this on purpose just to get drunk for cheap. I wasn't a lawyer, but a law clerk working with the prosecutor's office. This guy was caught on the highest quality security camera video I've ever seen, stabbing a store clerk 15 times. She survived. And then was tackled a block away from the scene not 5 minutes later by a man who had seen him flee and followed him. 25 feet from the knife and the jacket he'd been wearing that was covered in blood with a receipt with his name on it in the pocket. It was the literal definition of a slam dunk case. The guy chose to proceed to trial without his lawyer instead of having a case postponed after his attorney's house was broken into and all of his files were stolen. This guy's main argument was that it wasn't him because in the statement of probable cause written by the officers after the incident, they misspelled his highly unique last name by adding a T in the middle. Something like Johnson became Johnston. He spelled his name out at every opportunity with much emphasis. He also argued it couldn't be him because the man on the video tied a t-shirt around his head so that the distinctive tattoos there would be hidden. But he would never cover his own tattoos like that because he was very proud of them and they represented his heritage as a Korean man. The jury took less than a half hour to return a guilty verdict. Yeah, there really are people out there that will go to the ends of the earth without ever admitting that they've ever done something wrong. It's like 100 people just saw you do it, and it's on camera. Yeah, but I didn't do it. That's all I'm gonna say. It wasn't me. Not in court, but a conversation in my office. It doesn't matter if you were sober or not. You jumped out of a third-story window with a beer bottle and threw it at a cop. The jury's going to think you were drunk. Also, I think you were drunk. Yeah, there does tend to be a dilemma with a lot of people that some people think that if I let them know that I did it sober, then I'll get a more lenient sentence. Because, hey, I wasn't drunk, I was just being stupid. But then other people think that, oh, if I say that I was drunk during it, then maybe I'll get off with a lighter sentence because that's not really who I am, it was just the alcohol doing it. But anyways, that's all for this week. You know, I've never actually been to court for anything before. I've never been in either side of a lawsuit, I've never been involved in any kind of crime. I don't even know what an actual courthouse looks like. I've only seen ones on TV, and even then I haven't seen much. So this whole video is just kind of a mysterious world to me.